Listen, I want this video to be your sign to take the leap of faith. I remember this was a couple years ago, and I was in a place where I was going to jump out and gonna step out in faith, or I was going to stay where things were comfortable and easy. See, I'd been going through a season of preparation and a season of okay, God, do what you need to do in my life so I can be ready. And so one of the things that's really interesting about being prepared and being launched out is you can get comfortable in the preparation. You can get comfortable in the fact that you're just being molded and shaped in your character and your gifting and the different ways that God works in you. But then what happens when God says, okay, the time of preparation is done, and now it's time to go out and do what I've called you to do. And honestly, that can be a very scary place to be, because you're so used to being given a parameter and limitations. But what happens when God takes off the limitations, and now He's like, okay, you've been asking me to let you launch out. You've been asking me to let you step out in your gifting and your calling. It's time. And honestly, it can hit you by surprise to an extent, because you're like, oh, because you're so used to the process. But what happens when when it's time for you to step into the promise? Is we can look at how the Israelites, they walked through the desert for many years, and now they found themselves at a place where now it was time to put up, or it was time to shut up. And so God was raising up this man, Joshua, and He told them to be strong and courageous, right? So don't have any fear, because I'm with you wherever you go, type of situation. And so we look at Joshua's life, because he sat under Moses for many years. He was learning from him. He was getting wisdom from him. But now Moses was basically graduating to where God was taking him. And now it was time for Joshua to step in and step up. And so I can only begin to think where Joshua was in his headspace. I want to think that there's a reason why God kept telling Joshua, reassuring him to be strong and to be courageous, because in that time of, okay, for me, in that time of, hey, it's time to go, not all the pieces of the puzzle were there. There was going to be those moments where I felt like as I go, then God was going to open the door. And so I remember when that time came, I remember because my dream was always to be in ministry. My dream was to serve people. My dream was to use what God has given me and to help serve others with that. And so that first step was youth ministry. And I remember having this dream, man, I can't wait for God to do it. And I had such a desire to do it in Florida. And mind you, I'm from Indiana. At the time, I was living in North Carolina, but I was in Indiana. And so it came time, like there was a time, during the summertime, I was saving, I was preparing. And honestly, if I can be real with you, the savings were not enough. I think there was about $1,000 in my bank account. You're so ready, you're so willing, but you're so underfunded and honestly kind of underprepared as well. And so I remember being in contact with somebody, and they said, hey, listen, if you come out here, I will try to get you into where God is calling you to be. He saw God's call in my life. He saw the potential that I had. And so I remember it was that time to go. But the thing is I still didn't have a place to live there. I didn't even have a job yet. And so, but it was time. The preparation time was done. The time to pray was over, though staying in prayer, right? And so I just went for it. I remember, well, before I went for it, I was talking to this individual on the phone. I was like, "Hey, listen, it's now or never for me." And so, and he took a step of faith on me because we didn't even really fully know each other. And this man opened his doors and he said, "Okay, listen, I'll give you a week for you to come out here and let God work. And if you're thinking that within a week things fell into place, no, that was not the case. Okay, but what God did there was get me to take this massive step of faith that I really didn't think I'd ever take, because I remember as I was packing everything up, thinking to myself, man, I'm crazy for doing this. How is this going to work out? How is God going to supply here? And I don't want to say like I was big doubting, but there was a little bit of doubt there. I was like, man, maybe what if this falls through? What if I end up having to come back home in that walk of shame? Because the truth is this, is that there was people telling me there was no reason for me to go to Florida, that God can open a door exactly right where I was. But I knew in my heart that that wasn't what God was calling me to do. He was calling me to have big time faith and to step out and to trust Him in this process. We can look at where the Israelites were when they were getting ready to cross over the Jordan, that the waters didn't part until the Levites stepped into the waters, that the waters began to be opened. And that's what God was doing in my life, that as I was taking steps to get to Florida, then all of a sudden provision came. So He opened up the door. He started making a way. And the crazy thing though is that this absolutely kept me on my toes, because a few weeks had passed. I was making phone calls. I was setting up job interviews and all this stuff. And it was that time where finally I got connected with a church. So we were in talks and all this stuff, but there was still things to be worked out. And before I move forward in that though, is maybe you're in a place right now where you've been tossing back and forth of whether you should do what God has called you to do or not. And one of those things that I see from individuals when it comes to do what God has called them to do is that they want everything to be already ready. Like they want the path to be fully cleared. They want the opportunity to be so clear that, and in all honesty, that it's not going to take a lot of faith to take the steps. But what I've seen is that God He will carry you through the steps. You'll be almost unable to see where your foot will be placed next. But His goodness and His faithfulness and His provision are so amazing that if you trust Him, He will put your foot like where you won't slip, where you won't fall, where you won't fail. Okay, maybe, and I'm not saying that things, because the reality is sometimes things just don't work out, and it could still be God, but that's for another time. Okay, so but like I said, maybe that's you. Maybe you're like, God, I really want to do this, but I am scared to death. But here's the good news for you, is that you need to be strong and courageous, because He's commanded you. There's a command here that's being placed on your life to take this very step. And this is why I'm making this video, because if you can hear these words from me, that listen, it's scary. Okay. If you don't think that you're going to be scared to take the step, then you are absolutely mistaken, because you're going to be terrified. But if I know anything, is that it's about doing things scared, doing things shaking. But it's so beautiful because there is a difference between doing something afraid and making progress in it, and in your weakness and your uncertainty, but still making that forward progress. There's something so beautiful there to it, as opposed to just standing idle and doing nothing with what God has deposited in you. There's so much greatness on the inside of you. There's so much grace for you to walk these things out, because God called you specifically to this. He didn't call anybody else. He said, "Have I not commanded you?" And so here I was, is now, I'm it's kind of again, it got me to a place of faith. And so I was at this man's house, but I mean, I'd already been there for some time, and things hadn't got locked in just quite yet. And then here I was like, God, what is going to happen? Am I going to have to go back home? And so I got offered the job, but they were like, "Hey, we'll move you in December," and all this stuff. And again, it was that now or never. And so I was like, "Hey, boss, like this is gonna be like, I need you to do something, or I have to go back." And so they're like, "Okay, let's make it happen." And so here I was again. Now I have a job, but if you know anything about the state of Florida, it's an expensive place to live. So now I have to worry about, okay, where am I gonna live? And honestly, the job offer was not for very much money. Okay, even for, because this was late 2018. So even for 2018 standards, the pay was not enough. So not only was I taking a step and walking in faith, but now I had to trust God to fully provide my every need. And so now I'm like, okay, God, you're gonna supply the apartment. And I remember being like, this is gonna be scary. Luckily, the pastors had kind of had some connections with some apartments and stuff, and got led right to where I needed to be. You talk about God supplying. I mean, that apartment was like, I still think about it fondly. I remember just those Florida nights, man. Those just hit different. But man, I'm so thankful for that season, because once I took the step, then I saw provision come. And so I honestly didn't have to worry about anything. Is I mean, internally I was freaking out, but God just kept providing. God just kept making a way, all because I decided to walk in the commandment that He had for me, to be strong and courageous, because it took a lot of strength to do it. And it took a lot of courage to do it. Again, not having a whole lot of money to your name. Um, Honestly, the other thing too is the vehicle that I had. I mean, it wasn't a newer vehicle, so there was those worries. Okay, can my car make it all the way out there? Can my car sustain being away from my brother, who literally has been kind of my mechanic for a long time, and he makes sure I get things done and taken care of. And so here I was going to be so far away, so I didn't have that to fall back on. But I just knew that I had a word from God that said, "Have I not commanded you?" And so again, don't be afraid, because not everything has quite lined up for you. Matter of fact, the fact that it hasn't lined up just yet should be a clear sign. Hey, God is going to do a miraculous thing among you. And so again, let this be your sign. Let this be the time that you say, "God, I'm done with the excuses. I'm going to be strong, and I'm going to be courageous, and I'm going to let you do it." So listen, family, in this season, let's be strong, let's be courageous, and let's walk out the call that God has placed on your life. Now, let's go.